Welcome inside the War Room. I'm your host, Andrew Valancourt, and we're back today for episode 66 of the Dynasty War Room podcast. On today's show, we're going to do a Dynasty startup mock draft. So we're going to do 16 rounds of a Dynasty superflex tight end premium PPR startup. And I've got a special guest here for today's show to help me out with that, so it's going to be a fun one. And before I introduce our guest and we get to the draft, I want to remind everyone, as always, make sure you are following the show on your podcast platform of choice, whether it's Spotify, Apple, YouTube, you name it, we're there. So go give us a follow so you don't miss any future shows. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave us a 5-star review. That really helps the show out, and I greatly appreciate it. And find us on other social media channels. We are on Twitter or X at Dynasty War Room. You can find us on Twitter or Blue Sky. You can find me there at Andrew V. Court. And we're on YouTube at Dynasty War Room is our handle there. So go check us out. Follow along. We appreciate it. And before moving on into today's show, I want to remind everyone about my new friends at Fast Draft. So Fast Draft is a new fantasy best ball app. It's a quick and fun way to draft, and it takes some of the grind out of fantasy football. Fast Draft is giving away over $250,000 in prizes this year with all sorts of different tournaments. So all rookie contests, all flex tournaments, and even all defense tournaments. So there's a little bit something different for everyone there. The drafts are only 20 seconds per pick, so you can wrap up an entire draft in just 5 minutes. And if you sign up with code WARROOM, that's all one word, War Room, Fast Draft will double your first deposit up to $50. That means you get to play with $100 right off the bat, all just by using the code War Room on Fast Draft, who will double your first deposit today. All right, so now that we have talked about our friends at Fast Draft, I want to talk about my friend Chase Browning, who is here to join us for today's show. And mock drafts, of course, are always better with friends. And I think to give us a better variety of picks in a startup, with one of us picking in the first half of the draft and the other at the back half of the draft, Chase was kind enough to join us for today's show. He's going to be picking out of the number 9 spot in today's draft. And we've been friends and playing fantasy football together for a very long time. So I want to take this moment here to introduce Chase and give him a chance to say hi.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here. Been looking forward to doing this with you.
And we've been playing fantasy football now for a very long time, I think dating back to about 7th grade or so. So we're coming up on
20 years.
Which is wild. Makes us sound very old, even though I don't feel that old yet. But hearing that you've been doing any particular task for 20 years is pretty wild. So we have been playing in fantasy leagues together for many, many years, as we just said. All sorts of different leagues, different types of leagues, whether it's redraft or dynasty. Chase is a member of my home dynasty league, the Fantasy Football Federation, and we've had a lot of good battles over the years. Pretty good fantasy football rivals, always near the top of the standings. And now we're going to do battle here in a startup dynasty mock draft. So the way we're going to do this is I am picking out of the number 3 spot in the first round. Chase is picking out of the number 9 position. We're doing this draft on Sleeper. As I mentioned, it is a superflex tight end premium PPR league. So those are the league settings. It's how all of our leagues are that we play in. And I think it's really the best format for Dynasty, having that superflex aspect. We're also doing this with you're starting 10 players, so 3 flex positions outside of the superflex. That can be any of the 3 positions, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 1 tight end spot along with that. So we're just going to kick things off and see how things go. We'll kind of narrate the picks as they come, and then we'll walk you through our reasoning for each pick as it happens, and we'll see how we're able to build our teams up. So I'm going to go ahead and start this draft off. And wow, another huge surprise.
Wow.
We did a mock draft offline before this to get ready for this show, just starting things off with a couple rounds. And we had a huge surprise there. And now we have another one, albeit entirely different, in our live show here. So Joe Burrow, the number 1 overall pick according to Sleeper.
That's a shocker.
Which is a shocker. I don't think that that's going to happen in too many leagues. Josh Allen went number 2 off the board, which is much more reasonable. But Joe Burrow's a guy that I think was going around 105 in most leagues, and here we are with him going off the board a little bit earlier than expected. So,
I guess wild. If you like a guy.
And that's true. And Chase and I have seen that in leagues throughout the years where, somebody in your league has a guy. He's their boy. They're taking him no matter what. And sometimes it doesn't even matter, dynasty or redraft. We've seen it both ways. And this is one of those things. Hey, Joe Burrow, young enough, pocket passer, and locked into a really good offense. The CPU Team 1 is a big Joe Burrow fan. So that makes my decision a lot easier at number 3. I was anticipating having to choose between Lamar Jackson and Jamar Chase, which would have been a very difficult decision, but one that leading up to the show, I'd been coming around to Jamar Chase as the guy that I was going to take in the first round. So that's obviously going to not be the case. I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels, the Washington Commanders quarterback. I think he is the type of player that you really look for at the top end of a startup. Stud rookie. He has the rushing upside that I talk about all the time on this show. And I'm going to build my dynasty around Jaden Daniels here at the 103 to kick things off. Now, Lamar Jackson went off the board at 104. Justin Jefferson at the 5 spot. Jamar Chase went at 106, followed by Jalen Hurts, and then Jahmyr Gibbs at the 108. So Chase now on the clock, and Jahmyr Gibbs off the board at 108. A little bit of a surprise. He'd been going in this range, but Bijan Robinson, of course, another running back in the mix to be the first running back off the board. And you're now faced with a decision between Bijan Robinson, Brock Bowers still here as the top tight end, Malik Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, Patrick Mahomes, the top remaining quarterback, according to Sleeper's rankings here on ADP. So fill us in on your thought process here and what you're going to do.
Well, I think I have it pretty easy right now. In the last draft we did, this guy was not here. He actually got drafted before me. But I know a lot of people like to have a really solid core of wide receivers, especially in the startup dynasty draft. But I just think Bijan Robinson is going to be an absolute stud with Michael Penix. I think, especially with 1-point PPR, he's going to be a huge threat in the passing game. I think with Penix being young, I think he's going to get a ton of dump offs. Touchdown scorer. He's an every down back. I just think he's the best right now, best running back in fantasy. So I'm definitely going to go Bijan.
All right. And I think that works out pretty well for you. That's the top running back on your board, correct? You would take Bijan Robinson over Jahmyr Gibbs?
Correct. I have Bijan and then Gibbs right behind him. But just with how much Bijan got the ball last year and how much I think he's going to get the ball this year, I think he's definitely the number 1 running back. But Gibbs is still going to have a solid year. But those two guys for sure are the top 2 in fantasy right now.
Yeah, and this is where, the draft can get really interesting because you and I would have gone in different routes here, whereas, I would have probably been looking at Malik Neighbors, maybe Brock Bowers. I think Neighbors probably would have been my choice there. But look, running backs had their moment again last year, and it's can't really argue with that. They were awesome, and, here we are. You get the top guy off the board. So let's get this thing moving again here. And CeeDee Lamb goes off the board at 110. Patrick Mahomes at the 111, followed by Malik Neighbors at the 112. Brock Bowers at 201. Ashton Genty at the 2-2. Brian Thomas at the 2-3. And that puts you back on the clock here at the 4th pick in the second round, faced with another interesting decision here. So walk us through who you're looking at here and what you're going to do.
So there's a couple guys on the board right now. So in the rankings right now, there's Amon-Ra, Puka, Saquon, Trey McBride. I'm actually a firm believer in especially in a startup dynasty draft, you have to get a quarterback. You have to get a stud quarterback in the first 2 rounds. So right now there's Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Bo Nix, CJ Stroud. I really think Justin Herbert has a really good year ahead of him, especially adding Trey Harris in the draft, having Omarion Hampton. Lad McConkey was a stud last year. Plus, I saw a lot of good running potential in Justin Herbert. I think this is make or break for him. I think if he can't win with this team in Harbaugh, I don't know. We'll see, but I don't know. I think Herbert's just going to have a really, really good fantasy year coming up here. So I'm going to go Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. You talk about the importance of quarterbacks in superflex leagues, especially obviously here with, what do we have, 6 go off the board in the first round. And Herbert's a guy that's going to be around for a long time. He got a big contract, tied to a good offense. And I'm a huge Justin Herbert guy, as many listeners know, so no complaints here. And but you are passing up some pretty good players. So, St. Brown, Puka Nacua, some guys here, Saquon Barkley, the top running back on the board. But you've already secured a top running back. So I think from a process standpoint, going with the QB here makes a ton of sense. And Justin Herbert is the top guy on the board.
And there's some good young guys there like Caleb, Drake May, Bo Nix. I know they were all rookies last year, but, Justin Herbert being the vet, he has the arm, he has the legs, and I just think they do a lot with Justin Herbert in that offense. So I think Justin Herbert's definitely the pick.
All right, so next off the board is Amon-Ra St. Brown, followed by Saquon Barkley, who ends up in a nice little stack with the Jalen Hurts manager. Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, and Omarion Hampton are off the board next. And this puts me in a very difficult position here because I have a few quarterbacks that I could pick from, along with one of the top tight ends in the league in Trey McBride, and a couple nice wide receivers in Drake London and Lad McConkey. So this is really tough for me.
This is a tough pick.
I traditionally am someone that favors going wide receiver heavy early on. So in this position, Drake London, Lad McConkey would make a lot of sense. But I think given that this is a mock draft and I want to explore some different possibilities that are, available to me here. And that's what's so good about mock drafts is you get to try some new things, see what kind of strategies and team builds you like. And I'm going to go with a guy who I think is going to be in the top 3 of his position for, the next 5 to 10 years. And I'm going to take Trey McBride, which is something, again, taking a tight end this early in a startup is not something that I would do very often, but I think it makes a lot of sense. He's a complete stud. He is just got a huge contract, tied to a good offense. And I want to see what this team looks like with one of those elite tight ends secured at the top of the board.
I think that's a great pick right there, especially at 210, because there's no way he's going to be there at 3-3 for you. So I think sniping him right there is a really good pick.
And the next players that went off the board here, included Drake London, who was the next pick. So that was probably the other player that I would have taken there. Bo Nix off the board, followed by Garrett Wilson, Caleb Williams, and now I'm back on the clock. And part of me was hoping that Caleb Williams would have made it back around. That would have been a nice start for me with Jaden Daniels. But now I am picking here. Drake May is on the board. Lad McConkey is still here. Marvin Harrison, CJ Stroud, Devon Achane, JSN. So it's another difficult spot to be here. But to me, this is a decision that comes down to Drake May and Lad McConkey. Again, I've talked about the importance of wide receivers, but quarterbacks though, they're just as important. And I went with the young player in Jaden Daniels. I am tempted here to go with Drake May, and I'm just trying to see if I have the courage here to make that choice. What would you be doing in this spot? What would you be thinking if you were in my shoes?
I think having a Jaden Daniels, Drake May combo will benefit you for the next 5 to 6 years for sure. I think those guys are going to be the guys in their team for a very long time. So I'd probably go Drake May.
Would you take May over CJ Stroud? He's the other top quarterback here on the board. They're all right bunched up in this area. I think that May has some higher upside, but maybe some more safety in CJ Stroud.
And this is the thing where, like, if you want to go young, I mean, that's tough.
Yeah,
I think I might go Drake May just for the upside.
And I think that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go with Drake May and just see how this type of build plays out. I've secured the quarterback and tight end positions long term, and now I can build out the rest of my roster. My target now will be to fill up on some wide receivers with my next few picks, but we'll see if that's able to happen. So after I select Drake May, Bucky Irving goes off the board at 304, followed by Devon Achane, Ladd McConkey, CJ Stroud, and Tet McMillan. So that puts you back on the clock at the 3-9, and you have some pretty nice players here, especially at wide receiver, which is a position of need available. So what are you going to do?
This is tough. So right now on the board is Marvin Harrison, JSN, AJ Brown are the three guys I'm looking at. I think you're right. I think wide receiver definitely is the pick here. Jackson Smith-Njigba scares me. I just don't. Sam Darnold really scares me in that offense. I know he was a stud with Justin Jefferson, Addison in that offense, but I just don't know if he can get it done in Seattle. AJ Brown, he's been productive. He is getting up there in age. I think he's 27 right now. I'm in another league where I traded for this player, and I think it's who I'm going to go with. I think I'm going to go Marvin Harrison. I think he has a breakout year. I think the coaching staff in Arizona is definitely going to focus on getting him the ball, and I just think he's going to be a target machine. I think him and McBride are going to be monsters for the Cardinals. So I think I'm going to go Marvin Harrison.
All right, and I think that makes a lot of sense as well, given the upside that he possesses, and pairing him with guys like a young guy in Bijan Robinson as well. And you can't really go wrong. I think JSN, AJ Brown, to me, I would be looking at the two younger receivers between JSN and Harrison, and it's really kind of a coin flip in terms of what you're looking for in terms of a potential, high-end touchdown upside type of player in Harrison versus more of the PPR machine in JSN. And Harrison, I think, does possess a ton of upside, obviously, given that he was, the consensus 102 in rookie drafts a year ago, and he's in a good offense. So we'll see if he can have that breakout year. I think it's coming as well. And JSN right off the board with the next pick at 310, followed by AJ Brown. Then we have a couple running backs going off the board, and Jonathan Taylor and Breece Hall right at the 3-4 turn. Another one at the 4-2 and Kyron Williams, and then Jordan Love at QB, who I bet you had your eye on, goes off the board one pick before you at the 4-3.
I was definitely looking at J Love.
And you're a bigger Love fan than I am, but I think here in the fourth round of a startup, that is still pretty good value. And now because you're looking for your QB2, and what are you going to do here?
So right now on the board for quarterbacks, I think I definitely have to get a quarterback to pair with Herbert. We are in a two quarterback league, so right now it's Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Cam Ward, Brock Purdy, and JJ McCarthy. I'm a firm believer in wanting to win, and taking veteran quarterbacks is just something I like to do. I have this quarterback in another league, and he was an absolute stud last year. I think he's surrounded with a ton of weapons. I think he finally found his home, and I think he's going to be the starter for the next couple of years. And I think he stays in Tampa Bay. So I'm going Baker.
And this is, to me, knowing how you draft. That's not a huge shock to me, but I am a bit surprised that you would walk me through Mayfield versus Kyler Murray, because here you are, you just took Marvin Harrison. You would have the stack, and he's a little bit younger. So what's going through your decision process on that?
Over the years of playing fantasy, I really used to be a firm believer in having to get stacks. I think, I had a lot of teams in the past where, I had to have the quarterback wide receiver connection, but over the years, I've just, kind of got away from it and not having your eggs all in one basket, I think. Cause I think if I get Kyler here and he struggles, I think Harrison also struggles, but I do see the upside. I know Kyler runs a lot more. But I like that offense in Tampa Bay.
Offense.
I think.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. So.
And it secures your QB2 spot, and that's a very solid, consistent pairing, I think, between Herbert and Mayfield. I think you're locked in for the next few years with some really stable, consistent production. So here we go. You got about 10 seconds here. The Baker Mayfield off the board, followed by Travis Hunter, who goes off the board at 4-5. Another rookie, Travion Henderson, Sam Laporta. Kyler Murray goes off at 408, and then Christian McCaffrey, one pick before me at the 409. So here I am on the clock in the fourth round, the back of the fourth round, and I have Jaden Daniels and Drake May at quarterback and Trey McBride at tight end. And so this is where I am going to be looking for a wide receiver, unless there was someone that I thought was a huge value at running back. And I do not see a running back here that really gets me excited. And so I'm going to be looking at really two players. They're the top two receivers on the board. I'm looking at T. Higgins and Rashee Rice. So this is something where T. Higgins, age 26, Rice, age 25. It kind of comes down to whether you want to deal with some of the inconsistency in terms of games played that comes with T. Higgins. I think, we've seen the injuries pile up a little bit, especially where they're not necessarily major injuries. So Rice had that big injury that knocked him out for almost all of last year, whereas Higgins is someone that's a little bit more of a minor injury here, minor injury there, knocks him out for a game or two at a time, and it's a bit frustrating to deal with. But at the same time, he did secure that big contract in Cincinnati, and it's going to be a high-powered offense. I think that defense is going to continue to struggle. And so even though I am a big fan of Rashee Rice and his upside, I think given my position right now where I really need to have someone a little bit more solidified, I think, as my wide receiver one, I am going to go with T. Higgins, even though I am a big believer in Rice, and I'm hoping that he makes it back to me, although I think it's highly unlikely. But that's who I'm going with.
He went. And I think T. Higgins, when he plays and when him and Chase are on the field, they're studs. So keep that in mind, too. I mean, T. Higgins can be a great fantasy player.
And he is a better points per game type of player. So even though he's a little more frustrating to have in terms of, okay, is he ready to go or not? When he is available and playing and he's healthy, you're going to get good numbers. And so from that aspect, I think knowing that, hey, if he's unavailable, I'm just going to be able to slot someone else in. That's where I think that Higgins does make a lot of sense for me. Now, Josh Jacobs, followed by Rashee Rice, Quinshon Judkins, and Derrick Henry all went after my selection of T. Higgins. And so that puts me in a spot where I'm looking at a few different players. So I can secure a third quarterback if I would like. Cam Ward is on the board. Brock Purdy is on the board. J.J. McCarthy, Trevor Lawrence. So there's a lot of good QBs here that I do like. Devonta Smith, Xavier Worthy, Rome Odunze. And then the top two running backs are Chase Brown and James Cook. So this is a spot where if I'm playing purely in terms of value, I think that taking a QB would make the most sense. If you look at like trade values and whatnot, I think that a QB would land you the most of some of these players available. Cam Ward was somebody that just went in, the 3 to 6 range in rookie drafts. I don't know that you're getting that for many of these other guys, but I think, I know this is something that...
This is a tough pick.
I would like to go wide receiver. That is, generally speaking, what I would be looking to do here. But part of me really wants to secure my guy at a third quarterback spot, and that's J.J. McCarthy, who is...
He is one of your guys.
He's somebody that I believe in. I've already gone the young route at wide receiver, at quarterback with Daniels and May. And if I can hit on either McCarthy or May as a superstar, I'm locked and loaded in a really, really strong position moving forward. So I think ultimately for me, the two players that I am most interested here are J.J. McCarthy and Devonta Smith would be the two guys that I'm deciding between. Chase Brown also in the mix, but given the way I'm building this team where it's more about longevity than necessarily winning immediately in year one, I do think that I'm going to play the long game a bit, and I'm going to go with J.J. McCarthy. How do you feel about that move ultimately? I know you're not as big into J.J. McCarthy as I am.
I like the pick. Just JJ has to prove it to me. I know he wasn't the most productive in college. He was a winner for sure, but he just has to prove it to me. He has Justin Jefferson. He has Addison. And if he hits, the Vikings are going to be solid. So I get it. I'm a huge Michigan fan, and, I saw a lot of JJ McCarthy when he played. But yeah, he's just going to have to prove it to me. So We'll see.
And after I took McCarthy, Rome Odunze went off the board next at the 504, followed by Trevor Lawrence, James Cook, Devonta Smith, and Brock Purdy. So you are back on the clock at the 9th pick in the 5th round. So walk us through who you're looking at here.
I am in a very tough spot. So right now on the board is Cameron Ward, Chase Brown, Tyler Warren, Xavier Worthy, Jared Goff. Now, I'm leaning... There's two directions I could go. I could go running back to pair with Bijan. But I think the move here is I think I'm going to go tight end. And right now it has Tyler Warren as the number one tight end on the board. Behind or right in front of George Kittle, Colson Loveland, TJ Hawkinson. I think Daniel Jones, if he does get this starting job, I think he could look for Tyler Warren. I like the age. I like the production in college. I think he has a chance to be a stud. So, and even if Richardson does start, I think he can make the throws to the tight end. He's not the most accurate guy. I'm not the biggest Richardson fan, but
and at this point, we don't even know if he's going to be healthy enough to play.
Exactly. With that shoulder.
It's certainly looking like Daniel Jones. Now, Tyler Warren, you would be taking him ahead of Colson Loveland, George Kittle at the position. They're all bunched up, pretty much back to back to back in Sleeper's ADP. But Tyler Warren is listed the earliest of the three. So you like Warren better than those other two options?
I do. I think Kittle's getting up there. I think with Colson Loveland, he's just in so much competition to get the ball. I love him as a player, but I think Tyler Warren just might be the focal point at Indianapolis. So I think I like Tyler Warren there.
All right. So Tyler Warren goes off the board, followed by Cam Ward, Chase Brown, Jared Goff, Xavier Worthy, Michael Penix Jr. at the 602, George Kittle, and you are back on the clock at 604.
Gosh. All right. So right now it has on the big board Terry McLaurin, Kenneth Walker, RJ Harvey, Zay Flowers, Caleb Johnson. Dang. Well, I'm just going to take a complete chance. I know there's a lot of speculation with the contract. However, I do love his quarterback, and he is his guy. They got some help with Debo coming in. I think I got to get another receiver on this team. So I think I'm going to go Terry McLaurin.
And he was ultra productive last year. I mean, he was really
He
great.
was. And I like him more than Zay Flowers. I like DJ Moore, but like I said, he just has a lot of competition there. And the rest of the guys that I'm looking at are just, I don't know. I just think Terry McLaurin right now is definitely the number one guy in Washington. So I think I'm going to go Terry McLaurin.
All right. And following Terry McLaurin is DJ Moore, Kenneth Walker, RJ Harvey, Colson Loveland, TJ Hawkinson. And now I am back on the clock with another interesting set of players to choose from. So to recap, I have gone a bit of a unique route. I focused on sort of building for the future. I've got Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and JJ McCarthy. So I've already locked down 3 quarterbacks along with Trey McBride and T. Higgins. So it's pretty wide open for me. I can go wide receiver. I can go running back. And at this point, I am considering 3 players right now that are left on the board. So I am deciding between Zay Flowers, Chris Olave, and Caleb Johnson. And this is one of those things where I am going to try to play the ADP game, which is a big risk, especially in a startup where, if you miss out, it's the chances of you being able to work out a deal to get your guy back can be very difficult. But Chris Olave is probably the guy that I like the most, but he is the lowest of the bunch in terms of ADP. So I am going to hope that he makes it back to me, and I am going to secure a guy that I think is going to be a great NFL running back and take over the full-time starting job in Pittsburgh. And I'm going to go with Caleb Johnson here to get the first running back on my roster. And it looks like that decision worked out pretty good for me because Zay Flowers, Emeka Egbuka, Chuba Hubbard, and DK Metcalf go with the next 4 picks, putting me back on the clock where the top 2 receivers are Jordan Addison and Chris Olave. I could go with Jordan Addison for the stack with JJ McCarthy, but I do think that Chris Olave is just a higher tier of player. Obviously, the concussions are an issue, but he's the most talented true receiver of the guys here available. And so I'm going to go ahead, and that's an easy pick for me to snag Chris Olave. Now, Dak Prescott off the board with the next pick, followed by Jordan Addison, Bryce Young, Jamison Williams, and then David Montgomery, which puts you back on the clock here at the 7:09.
So right now there's a couple ways you can draft when you have startups. Right now, I have a team with some vets on it. So, Justin Herbert, Baker, Terry McLaurin, Bijan, he's played a couple years, but I'm kind of in a win now sort of thing. So I'm not afraid to take these older players necessarily. I'm kind of looking at wide receiver to pair with McLaurin and Marvin Harrison. So right now there's George Pickens is on the board. There's Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Matthew Golden, and Mike Evans. And I think what I'm going to do is just take the best receiver on the board and take Pickens. I think him getting out of the Steelers is the best possible thing that could have happened to him. I think him and CeeDee Lamb could have a huge year together. So yeah, I'm going to take Pickens. I try to stay away from Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins. I just am not the biggest fans of theirs.
And the age factors in too, of course, when you're looking at somebody like Hill.
For sure. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go Pickens.
Matthew Golden off the board, followed by Tyreek Hill, Joe Mixon, Jalen Waddle, Alvin Kamara, Mike Evans, and that puts Chase back on the clock here in the 8th round. And Justin Fields, the top QB, we're starting to get a little bit thin at that position. And Jerry Jeudy is there, the top wide receiver in ADP. Isaiah Pacheco, Dalton Kincaid, Luther Burden. So we're starting to get into that mix here where you're probably going more purely based on the guys that you truly like instead of just trying to play the ADP game as much. And your roster at this point, you got 3 receivers, you got a running back. You have your 2 quarterbacks and a tight end. So you're really in a position where you can go any direction that you want here in the 8th round.
For sure. I just am not a fan of some of these running backs. Isaiah Pacheco, Cam Scatabo, Brian Robinson, Swift are the top ones on the board. For wide receivers, there's Jerry Jeudy, Luther Burden, Brandon Ayuk, Jaden Higgins.
And I think this is something, too. You mentioned kind of the lack of quality in some of these running backs. I think this is where mock draft versus real life, there's probably a big difference because there's a lot of teams here that have selected 3 or even 4 running backs already from the CPU teams. And I just have a hard time seeing anyone in a current startup taking 4 running backs in the first 8 rounds. And Team 11 did that with Ashton Genty, Kyron Williams, Chase Brown, and now Kamara, which is obviously a great group of running backs, but I have a difficult time seeing too many teams going that route given the current way that we view Dynasty with wide receivers kind of leading the way. But that's how this board has fallen. And it's something that you and I both might be looking at where, hey, we might be pushing these running backs a bit down and trying to figure out a trade post-draft or even during a startup.
For sure.
Or maybe you're looking to trade some picks to figure a running back out if you don't like who's on the board. So who are you going with here in the 8th round?
I think, you know what? I'm just going to take him. You're a big fan of him. He's the obvious guy. He has a year or 2 left. I'm just going to go James Conner. I need a second running back.
He is my guy. And I've had great success with James Conner over the last several years as being a good late round value. And he gives that starting lineup a nice boost for you. And Justin Fields goes off the board next, followed by Luther Burden, Jerry Jeudy, Jaden Higgins, and Brian Robinson right before I pick here at the 8-10. So I'm looking at a lot of these same players, and I am certainly in need of another wide receiver. I could use another running back. I'm pretty much ready to go at QB and tight end. I'm probably not going to be filling my number 2 tight end spot this early, even though there are a couple names that I think are interesting with Dalton Kincaid and Mark Andrews. This is where I am going to try to find some value, I think, at receiver. And looking through my options, I might be looking at something where, okay, which of the 2 San Francisco wide receivers do I believe in more between Ricky Pearsall and Brandon Ayuk? Do I want to go the veteran route with Devontae Adams? Do I want to go veteran but a little bit of a longer leash in Cortland Sutton? Or take a rookie in Trey Harris? And so those are kind of the names that I'm looking at here. There is Chris Godwin's on the board. Josh Downs is somebody that I like a lot at this position. And knowing, again, that I have, the ADP game to play with, only 2 managers picking before me, this is tough. I'm even looking at some of the running backs here. I said I was probably going to go wide receiver, but looking at the wide receivers versus the running backs, I think there is more value left at wide receiver compared to running back. I'd be looking probably at Scatterbo or even DeAndre Swift is a name that is catching my eye right now on the board. And
Hello?
I want to get your thoughts on this. I mean, would you be looking
All right,
at
hold
somebody
on a
like
sec.
Swift? Would you
Let me
be
shut my
looking at
door.
wide receiver? I mean, the wide receivers here, Cortland Sutton.
Dude, I thought
is
we were
someone
having a
that
good
I
show.
like. Trey Harris as a rookie
Yeah,
certainly is
there's
someone
some
that has
tough
my attention. And
And you kind of have a younger
same here.
team too.
Some of these
So,
picks are like coming out of nowhere. I'm like,
think
dude, are
there
you serious?
is
But
some
I'm trying to like
potential
be a
with,
little bit
like a Trey Harris,
I don't know. Some of my I'm not like
or even like a
the
Scatabo.
happiest with the team, but it is what it is.
This is tough.
I think I'm gonna.
I'm leaving this to you, but you know what? Screw
and
it.
just go with a player that I feel is going to take a major leap here. And maybe it's a bit of a reach, but I'm going to go with Josh Downs from the Colts. I think he's a guy that is in line for a breakout, especially if it is Daniel Jones. Now, if it is not Jones and it's Anthony Richardson, I'll feel much worse about that selection. But I think this injury issue with his shoulder is probably going to be, be something that costs Anthony Richardson the starting job here. And it worked out okay for me because there are still some solid names that made it back. Isaiah Pacheco, Devontae Adams, Ricky Pearsall, and Cortland Sutton were the next 4 picks. So now I can go with someone like Dalton Kincaid, who is still a youthful guy at age 25. I could go with Cam Scatterbo at running back and go with the pair of rookies at the position. Trey Harris is still somebody that is catching my attention here, as well as Brandon Ayuk. And then if you go a little bit further down the board, again, DeAndre Swift, Kyle Pitts, Tucker Kraft is someone that I like. And I think this is where I am going to stick with the theme of the young players on my roster. I'm going to take Trey Harris in this spot. I'm building with youth, and if somebody like Trey Harris can hit for me, that's going to be really, really good for the outlook down the future. So at receiver for me now, I have T. Higgins, Chris Olave, Josh Downs, and Trey Harris. And following my selection, Dalton Kincaid, Mark Andrews, Cam Scatterbo, Tyrone Tracy, and Brandon Ayuk all were selected, which puts you on the clock here with the 9th pick in the 9th round.
So you may or may not have just taken my pick. I know I had mentioned earlier.
And you have the Justin Herbert, so that would have been a stack.
I do. And I mentioned earlier, not nowadays not being like really into the stack, but he would have been a nice young piece to have. But I think I just got to take the stance that I have a win now team. I have some youth. I mean, Bijan's still young. Tyler Warren is a rookie. But right now I'm looking at some of these wide receivers. There's Jaden Reed, Chris Godwin, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Jack Betch. I think this guy that I'm about to take is a perfect flex player. He gets the targets. I think he's Josh Allen's boy. He's actually on my home team, and he's been productive for me. So I think I'm going to go Khalil Shakir.
And I'm a big Khalil Shakir fan. This was like the unofficial Khalil Shakir fan podcast last year.
Fan club.
It's...
And he played well.
He did. He is the true number one on that offense. Not that it's like he's a top 12 type of guy, certainly, not even probably top 24, but he's certainly a capable flex receiver where at this point in the draft, that's really what you're looking for. And
he'll get double digits.
Yeah, he's a solid 10, 11 points per game guy for you. And, at this point, that's what you're looking for. Now, you're back on the clock again here in the 10th, and Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft, Jackson Dart, Kyle Pitts, Chris Godwin, and DeAndre Swift all just were selected.
So I think there's a couple of ways I could go. There's a couple quarterbacks still on the board here. Tua, Sam Darnold, Anthony Richardson.
And you still have your 2 quarterbacks, so this would be your your prime opportunity here to take a third guy. Because after that, the board starts to get a little thin at quarterback. After Tua, Darnold, then you're looking at Richardson, Stafford, Geno Smith, Tyler Shuck, Jalen Milroe. I mean, we're that's starting to get pretty far down the board there in terms of guys that you'd feel comfortable starting. So sounds like that's certainly an option for you here, along with a couple solid receivers.
I think I'm leaning
and Zach Charbonnet, Tony Pollard. You got some nice options here.
This is tough.
Who's on the board?
I think right now I'm going to hope a quarterback is left for me coming back in the 11th. I'm going to give myself some tight end depth, and I'm going to go David Njoku. I think he could have a potential to have another solid year, pairing him up with Tyler Warren, who is a rookie, and then having some sort of depth, like I said. So I think I'm going to go David Njoku, and plus he's the number one tight end on the board right now.
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially going with, like you said, you have a rookie on your roster, gives you some veteran presence to be able to throw in your starting lineup in case there's a bit of a slow start for Warren. So Tua is not going to make it back to you because after Njoku, it went Tony Pollard, Travis Etienne, Tua Tagovailoa, Keon Coleman, and Trey Benson. And that puts me on the clock here at the back of the 10th round. And scanning this board and looking at the way that my team is currently built, I think that this pick is actually pretty easy for me. I am in pretty solid need of a second running back. I could certainly use another receiver, but Besh versus Charbonnet are probably two of the guys here that I'd be looking at. Could go the tight end route. Michael Pittman is intriguing. Calvin Ridley, but those guys are a little bit lower down the board. So if I'm wanting to go running back receiver here, I'm going to go ahead and take Zach Charbonnet. I think that's just the easy pick for me. I think that he possesses a lot of upside should Kenneth Walker get hurt. And it looks like I jinxed myself because the guy that I was going to take coming back was Michael Pittman, and he went with the very next pick. So Michael Pittman, Travis Kelce, Jack Besh, and Jonnu Smith all taken at the 10-11 turn, which, again, puts a bit of a damper on what my plan was. But we're starting to see this is something where in Sleeper, if you're doing mock drafts, it's important for listeners to know that quarterbacks start to bunch up as you get into the double-digit rounds, and we're starting to see that a little bit where guys might be taken earlier in your actual drafts. And so we have a few QBs at the top in Darnold, Richardson, and Geno Smith, along with Matthew Stafford. I expect one of those guys probably to at least one to make it to you here in the mock in the 11th. But for me, I'm not looking at QB anymore. I am picking between Jacoby Myers and Calvin Ridley, adding a veteran presence to my receiver room. I've gone almost entirely youth. I think the oldest player on my roster is actually T. Higgins at age 26. So, I've definitely built through youth right now, and I think that Myers and Ridley both are on the older side, and I don't love some of the younger options that would be available to me at receiver. I could go Kyle Williams, Jalen McMillan, but to me, Calvin Ridley is who I'm going to go with. I think he still has a lot of talent, and he has that nice quarterback upgrade.
And he's the obvious one
right
there.
And so I think for somebody that I can throw into my starting lineup, if I can make a trade for a running back or something along those lines, I might be in position to be able to make a little bit of noise, although I do think this is more of a year two type of build for me right now at this point. But Jacoby Myers does go with the next pick, followed by Bishal Tutin, Isaiah Likely, Aaron Jones, and Jake Ferguson, putting you back on the clock.
Well, this couldn't have worked out any better. I have my options of some quarterbacks.
Yeah, you got Sam Darnold, who I know you and I both just absolutely love. And Geno Smith, Matthew Stafford. You can take the upside shot on Anthony Richardson. But this is where Sam Darnold might make a lot of sense as a value and a locked-in starter. But walk me through what you're thinking here between all those guys.
So I have Justin Herbert, who's a solid, quarterback 1, quarterback 2. Same with Baker. I mean, you could switch those guys just on how productive they are. But
just based on how my team is with a lot of these veterans, I think I'm going to go Matthew Stafford. I like, the Adams upgrade. We have Puka, who's still a stud. Stafford still has a year or two left in him. And, if I have to, he's perfect bye week quarterback. If Mayfield or Herbert getting dinged up for a week, he's, a perfect plug and play. So I like that offense. Kyron Williams. So I'm going to go Stafford.
Yeah. And he's like you said, he's in a really good spot, good system. And you definitely are going a bit more of that veteran win now, right away kind of build, which certainly fits your play style. And Najee Harris, Evan Ingram, Jalen McMillan, Juwan Jennings, Kaya Williams, and Jalen Warren all go before your next pick, putting you back on the board here in the 12th round.
And we've talked about it, with our home league. It's on startups. If you're going to have a strategy, just stick to it. Like, if you want to have, an older, veteran win now team, then just go for it. Like, for instance, we had a player who, took a Christian McCaffrey, who was getting older, and a Nick Chubb in his prime who was getting older, and, just started taking a bunch of rookies and kind of just threw his team completely off. So Andrew can speak on that.
Yeah, you want to stick with your theme, because especially if you're taking guys that are locked in, ready to go year one to win now, pairing those players with guys that aren't really going to help you. Sure, you might be trying to go for the value if you're looking to build that way, but again, you got to remember the ultimate goal here is to win a championship, and the best way to do that is to just pick a theme and go with it rather than mix and match, and then at the end of your draft, you're going, what do I do here? I have all these rookies that aren't going to do anything in year one, but I have Cooper Kupp and I have Christian McCaffrey and whatever else, and you're stuck in a tough spot.
So here, I think I definitely need a running back. I only have Bijan and James Conner. I need some depth there. So right here on the board is Tajay Spears, Jaden Blue, Ramondre Stevenson, Javonte Williams, Rachaad White. I think I've heard a lot that they're going to try to minimize Pollard a little bit. I think it's going to be more of a true 50-50 in Tennessee. I do like a little bit what I saw from Spears last year when Pollard got hurt. So I think I'm going to go Tajay Spears.
I think that's the right pick here. I think that's probably the running back that makes the most sense.
For sure.
And gives you a little bit of youth, too, to add to that. Yeah. Ring. So following Spears, Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Javonte Williams, Stephon Diggs, and Jaden Blue off the board before my selection here at the back of the 12th. And right now, I have filled out my starting lineup. I've got my three quarterbacks. I could certainly use some depth at running back, but I also could use some depth at receiver because I have some young guys that may or may not be startable right away in terms of Trey Harris, Josh Downs still, while I love the upside, still does have to, prove it on the field. So looking through the guys available right now, I think there's some nice upside potential. I could also snag a backup tight end, which would make a lot of sense. Darnell Mooney is on the board. Marvin Mims is available. Pat Freiermuth, Mason Taylor, Ramondre Stevenson is the top running back listed on the board. And I think that I want to go for a player. Man, this is a really difficult situation here. Yeah, because I want to stick to my theme, but I also want to help, boost my lineup a bit here. And so I think right now I'm looking at Darnell Mooney or Marvin Mims. And I talked about Marvin Mims on a previous show about the breakout potential this year. Really nice sleeper in my mind. But Darnell Mooney is still only 27 years old. He's the clear number 2 in that offense. And I think that I might be able to start him and get some good usable weeks. So I am going to go ahead and take Darnell Mooney and see who makes it back to me. And Marvin Mims, unfortunately, does not make it back. I would have been thrilled with that to be able to go Mooney and Mims. Instead, Mason Taylor goes along with Pat Freiermuth, Rachaad White, and Marvin Mims, the pick before I am back on the clock in the 13th round. So now this is where I have to get a little bit creative and there's one running back that really grabs my attention here, and that is Jordan Mason from the Minnesota Vikings. I think he has a chance to take a lot of work in that offense from Aaron Jones. I also like a couple of the young tight ends. Terrence Ferguson is a guy that sticks out to me here. I know that you like him a good bit as well. He's a player that catches my attention. Rashid Shaheed is a wide receiver. Rashad Bateman, that would be in consideration. But I think I'm going to go ahead and grab a running back in Jordan Mason here that I think can give me a solid startable option down the road and give me some goal line work as well. And Jalen Noel, goes, spelled Noel, but I think it's pronounced Jalen Noel. He goes at 13:04, followed by Ramondre Stevenson, Rashid Shaheed, Xavier Legette, and Braylon Allen, putting you on the clock here at 13:09.
I'm just looking at some of these players and just the value. You mentioned Terrence Ferguson. He right now it has Cade Otton, Terrence Ferguson, Dallas Goedert, Elijah Arroyo, and then receiver Rashad Bateman, Cedric Tillman, Jalen Royals. These running backs are just
the running back market once you get this late in the draft is not pretty. It's a lot of just backups.
A lot of these players are in three running back committees type stuff, which is just horrible.
I mean, you're looking at Tank Bigsby, J.K. Dobbins, Garendo showed some flashes. Ray Davis as a backup, but it's some slim pickings there.
You know what? Ever since starting, Dynasty in this league, I've learned that, especially in a tight end premium, having some young stud tight ends can win leagues for you. I think I'm going to go Terrence Ferguson.
When I saw him make it to you, I was like, that's going to be your guy there. And you've got Tyler Warren, David Njoku to help you out in the short term. And I think that makes a ton of sense. And it's probably the guy that I would take as well if I were in your shoes. So I love the pick. And after Ferguson went Dylan Sampson, Tank Bigsby, Rashad Bateman, Devin Neal, J.K. Dobbins, and Elijah Arroyo. And now you're back up here in the 14th with the fourth pick in the round.
So when we first did our startup in the home league, I drafted this player, and I swear he was going to be a stud. And I still think this guy could be a starter on any other team. And I am a huge, firm believer in having a solid handcuff. This may be a little bit of a reach, but I love this guy, especially if Bijan gets, dinged up a little bit during the year. I'm going to go Tyler Algier.
I think that makes a lot of sense here. Handcuffs for your running backs, especially in the 14th round of a startup. This is where you do that. This is where you secure your guy, protect yourself in case of injury, and he's still a young, solid piece. It's not like it's some insane reach that would never happen here. I mean, this is prime spot. He's going in the same range here as Garendo and Ray Davis and Devin Neal and Dylan Sampson. I mean, these are Tyler Algier fits right into this tier of players, and I think it's a perfect.
I like that
for
pick.
Some running back depth.
All right.
And following that pick went Cade Otton, Harold Fannin, Isaac Garendo, Ray Davis, and Cedric Tillman, which puts me back on the board. I'm set at quarterback. At this point, there are some players here in this mock draft that would not be available here in a real draft, so I'm going to refrain from picking those guys. Sam Darnold would not make it this far. Geno Smith, some of these other QBs. I think Russell Wilson could be a guy that would be here. But again, I think I feel good at quarterback. I'm not looking to go that route. I'm looking more at the other positions, running back, wide receiver.
You're solid at quarterback.
I could use a second tight end to go behind Trey McBride. So that's a spot. There's a couple names. I like Brenton Strange. Dallas Goedert is still available. And just scrolling through these positions, I do think that I want to snag myself a number 2 tight end. And right now I am looking at Brenton Strange as a guy that stands out. He's a young enough player.
I like Brenton Strange a lot.
The starting role that should be an improved offense. I don't love any of the running backs here. There's a few guys that I would like to add, maybe coming back. And then even at wide receiver, it's just not a lot of names that I'm super excited about. So I am going to take the upside shot on Brenton Strange turning into a solid player. He fits into my strategy here of youth and gives me another guy at the tight end position. So a bunch of running backs went off the board after that. DJ Giddens, Jalen Wright, Blake Corum, and Jonathan Brooks. And this works out for me because I was looking at a depth running back that I like as a rookie, and that's Jarquez Hunter. He is someone that is here and available. In terms of a wide receiver, I'd probably be looking at Wan'Dale Robinson, maybe Pat Bryant. But at this stage in the game, and I could go right back to tight end as well. I actually really like doing this in drafts where when you get to a point in the draft where, you're just trying to stack some solid usable pieces, Dallas Goedert here would make a lot of sense for my roster. So would Jatavian Sanders. And so those two players would absolutely be in consideration for me. But I do want to add a little bit of bench depth at running back. So I am going to take Jarquez Hunter, who I think has a real chance to secure the backup role with the Rams this year. And I think that's a pretty solid value here in the 15th round because he's being drafted right now behind guys that I had far behind Hunter in my rookie rankings. So I'm taking Hunter. Jalen Royals follows that along with Rico Dowdle, Hollywood Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Ollie Gordon. And you are back on the clock here with the 9th pick in the 15th round. So we got one more round after this. So who are you going to take?
You kind of said it perfectly. I like just stacking positions that just have a lot of upside. I like Jatavian Sanders here. Theo Johnson's a name I've seen thrown around a lot. I'm just trying to look at my team. I'm pretty balanced across the board. I have, 4 running backs. I have 4 wide receivers, my 3 running backs, and 3 quarterbacks, and then 3 tight ends. I'm stuck here. Yeah, like you said, a lot of these names just aren't getting me excited too much.
And that is what happens when you get down here on the board, here in the 15th round of a startup. But sometimes these players can end up being really important pieces. And looking at names, there are a few receivers that I think are interesting. Ben Sinnott is here at tight end, Cole Kmet, Theo Johnson, Chigo Okonkwo. A couple rookie running backs still on the board, Woody Marks, Jordan James, Trevor Etienne. So
I think I'm going to go the wide receiver route. I'm deciding between Wan'Dale Robinson and Pat Bryant. I actually drafted Pat Bryant in the home league, and I think he has a lot of potential in Denver, but I think I'm going to go the safe route. I think I'm going to go Wan'Dale Robinson.
And I think that
right
is
here.
a fine pick, and that's probably who I would take as well. I think that receiver in this range is the way to go, given some of the players available. And you could take both here. You could get Pat Bryant because Trevor Etienne, Jalen Coker, Jordan James, Jerome Ford, Christian Kirk, and Marshawn Lloyd all went off the board between picks for you. So now you're back up here with your final pick of the draft.
And that is exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm going to take Pat Bryant. I think he has a lot of potential, like I said, in Denver, playing opposite of Cortland Sutton. I think Bo Nix had a great year. I think he's going to be a solid quarterback in this league. He has the go get the ball mentality, Pat Bryant. So I'm going to take Pat.
All right. And following him, Woody Marks, Elike Omanor, Austin Eckler, Roshan Johnson, who is a guy that I was really hoping would make it back to me. Adonai Mitchell, and now I am on the clock, and that is a bummer. I would have been interested in Roshan Johnson here, the top running back on the board.
And he was the obvious backup for
and
Swift.
I talked about him on a previous show too as a potential breakout, somebody that is a nice sleeper and valuable. Brashard Smith is somebody that is intriguing to me here. I would certainly have him in consideration. Quentin Johnston is still kicking around on the Chargers. I could pair him up with Trey Harris. He had a solid season last year. Romeo Dobbs. Let's see. It's thin at all the positions, but Jatavian Sanders is still here, as well as Ben Sinnott. And I think I want to take one of those two tight ends. So that's what I'm going to be looking at here. Either Jatavian Sanders or Ben Sinnott. Sanders had some flashes last year, whereas Ben Sinnott, not so much. And this is where, even though I think Sanders showed more, I'm going to take Ben Sinnott because I do have Jaden Daniels. I think that's a nice little stack for me to have. And he was a second-round pick. So I'm going to take him, and Brashard Smith, of course, goes one pick after, so he wasn't going to make it back to me. And then Audric Estime is going to round out our draft with the final pick of the 16th round. So let's read through our teams here and give people kind of the full picture of how our rosters came together. So I went with more of the younger player focus, especially with how the draft started for me. I think I'm very set at quarterback and tight end. And I went with Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and J.J. McCarthy at QB. My running backs are Caleb Johnson, Zach Charbonnet, Jordan Mason, and Jarquez Hunter. My wide receivers are T. Higgins, Chris Olave, Josh Downs, Trey Harris, Calvin Ridley, and Darnell Mooney. And at tight end, I have Trey McBride, Brenton Strange, and Ben Sinnott. So who do you have over there on your final roster?
So, like I've been mentioning throughout this draft, I have definitely more of a veteran presence on this team, a win now. So, looking at this roster, I have Justin Herbert, Baker Mayfield as the QB1, QB2 with Matthew Stafford. I have Bijan Robinson, James Conner, Tajay Spears, Tyler Algier. And then for wide receivers, I have Marvin Harrison Jr., Terry McLaurin, George Pickens, Khalil Shakir, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Pat Bryant. And then with my tight ends, I have David Njoku, Terrence Ferguson, and I thought I had someone else. Did I just have the two tight ends? Tyler Warren.
Your starter there.
Yep, so Tyler Warren, David Njoku, and Terrence Ferguson.
All right. Well, so there you have it. A little bit of a longer show today, but I think some good startup info. And, summer is a great time to do startup drafts. I know that a lot of people like to do it in the winter. You're excited. The NFL season ended. There's a bit of a lull in the calendar. But I prefer to do it in the summer. I think June, July are great months to do it because your post-NFL draft, you really have more of the full picture, and you can draft sort of with a team ready to go instead of needing to make some major moves post-draft. And allows you to throw the rookies in there as well, like we did here. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and a big thank you to Chase Browning here for joining us on the show, drafting with us.
Yeah, thank you,
we'll
Andrew.
try to get him on again for some future shows as well. But that's it for today's show. So use code WARROOM on Fast Draft. Go download the app and make sure you're following the show on your platform of choice. And check back next week for another episode here. You've been listening to the Dynasty War Room podcast.